So I like to think of industrialized construction as like the house that I see industrialized construction built. And so it starts with technology enablers, right? So we see IoT sensors on everything. We want to attach IoT sensors to lots of pieces of equipment. Eventually, and now we're attaching them to assemblies in the building so we can have, digital twin and things like that. But big data and analytics is part of industrialized construction. And we also want to think about the cloud. And then there are some process enablers. And I know some of you are not exactly from the design or construction space or in architecture, but we like to think of manufacturing in the lean manufacturing terminology. BIM, for those of you who don't know that acronym, is Building Information Modeling. It's basically three-dimensional plus, like 340, 5D drawings to make sure, or models really, to make sure that we understand how these buildings are going to be put together and not just in flat 2D drawings. And we'll talk a little bit about how it's okay and we need everyone to get on BIM, but you have to make the eye intelligent. It's not enough just to model things. A lot of you hear this terminology, DFMA. And you're hearing people say it's called design for manufacturing and assembly. Everybody talks about they want to have prefab and modular data centers, and I want assemblies. And how many of you have heard kit of parts? I want all of these things. But you have to design it that way. And so we've taken a word from manufacturing called DFMA, design for manufacturing and assembly. It's a concatenation of two words, ease of manufacturing and ease of assembly. And in our world, what we messed up a little bit is that the makers in manufacturing actually define DFMA, how to make it easiest and how to assemble it easiest. So we heard that word design, and we said it must be the architect's understanding. They have to be the one that designs this so that I could manufacture it the best way, so I could do a kit of parts. But it's not about design. It's about the data for manufacturing and assembly that we sort of missed in that. And we've expected architects to be able to know everything, and that's kind of impossible, right? Nobody can know. Not even architects can know every piece part, every proprietary system that we need to manufacture in order to make these data centers work, right? It's impossible. So there is, on the physicality of pieces and parts that we see in data centers, there are, products that we think of like advanced building products like Victaulic. Maybe my friends from Victaulic are here, where we don't have to weld pipe anymore. You'll see single trade assemblies, meaning pipe spools or electrical components and things like that that have been put together in factories. And then we are doing lots and lots of multi-trade assemblies. Most of you have seen skids or even big open racks with multiple trade on them, electrical, plumbing, right? All that stuff on the rack coming from the factories. And then we have volumetric modules. Make sure you know that that is not a hierarchy. Kits of parts are just as good as volumetric modules, especially if your module is going far and there's lots of air in it. You don't want to ship expensive air. And we want to make sure that we understand that continuum and the data for all those pieces and parts and where they're coming from, so that we can build things with robotics and automation. We don't want to weld on site anymore. We don't want to cut things on site. Sustainability is really important to me. And we have to do this. We have to understand this in order to get a more sustainable world, right? We want to start building things in the most advanced way. We don't want to do things the way we did them 100 years ago, right? And why do we have to do to that kit of parts? We have to productize them. So let's talk about why now. The world has changed. And actually, this report by McKinsey, and they said in the next 15 years, this was 2 years ago, 45% of all of the construction and design in the world is going to be done in industrialized construction fashion. 45%. It's pretty much past the tipping point, right, at that point. And why is it happening? Because we have these emerging disruptions that are happening. New materials are happening. We're seeing digitization. How many of you are getting off paper? Hopefully you're all off paper, and you've converged your business model with digitalization. And we see a lot of new entrants in the marketplace. And so we see people buying different things. They're aggregating companies. Lots of change, right? But what they said is the most impactful thing that would happen in the next 1 to 3 years in the future industry dynamics was going to be a product-led approach. Not design-led, a product-led approach, right? 1 to 3 years, that was almost 2 years ago. And so 66% of those survey respondents think that industrialization, this industrialized construction, and digitization is going to have the highest impact of any of those emerging trends. And actually, there was about 9 of them, but I shortened the list so you didn't have to read them all. That's really important to you to understand. But we have a problem beyond that, just in our normal practices. People design things that can't be made. They make assumptions, and then we can't make them, and then we have risk and uncertainty, and it's iterative, and it's expensive, and that's why it's called an estimate, and that's why you have a bunch of line items called design contingency and construction contingency, and the owner puts contingency on there. We have very little certainty. But here's what I do know. We need digital infrastructure. That I'm certain about, and I know that we need a lot of it, and we need to keep moving it along and getting everybody online. So what is the real opportunity here for all of you to be part of this ecosystem is that you and I, together, and Autodesk, all of us, we have to connect these tools. We have to connect these workflows and make them usable at scale. Here's what we do today with contractors, right? A designer, and in this case, I was looking at a football stadium. What are they interested in? How big is the stadium? What does it look like? How cool does the entrance look like? That little piece part right there is the guts behind the bathroom wall, the gang bathroom. And it's MEP, heavy mechanical electrical plumbing. It's a little box. In the beginning, they're like, I don't know, we need bathrooms. They stick a dumb empty box behind that wall of the stalls. By the way, in stadiums, people drink a lot of beer. It's not so pretty, but we need those bathrooms, right? So we take it off our desktop, which is Revit, in our case, which is a building information modeling software. It comes on this, it's static. We have a space allocation for it. We're like, I don't know, it was 20, so I took the last one I did, it was 12 bathrooms. I just stretched it. And then they give it to the GC with pretty much no information or some information or wrong information or an estimate or something like that, incomplete data, and then my poor friend over here gets it months later, and they're like, you got to do this for me. Give me a price. And he's like, wait, that's a 12-stall size for this bathroom, and you want 20 bathrooms in it. Like, that's not going to work, right? And I don't have enough space. And so what do those guys do? They hand it to their fabrication shop manager. If you don't know, all the large MEP contractors these days have fabrication shops. And then they give it back to the architect, or GC, who gives it back to the architect, and it obviously doesn't meet their requirements. By the way, if you're one of those building product manufacturers, it's even worse. You're like 2, 3, 4 levels down with distribution. You don't even know it's the same job. You just gave them some parts that you didn't even aggregate what you're doing because you're so far downstream. Here's the bad news. We do this for thousands of interdependent assemblies every single day on data centers. Thousands. What gets reconciled first? I don't know. Steel's got to be bought. The GC's self-performing. I'm doing this. My friend is this. I'm going to reconcile this one thing that negates the possibility of all these other things. It's done in that way with our mouth and our feet. Not so often with technology, right? There is a difference between products and prefabrication. Prefabrication, it happens usually downstream. It could be very good. Those are my friends at HT Lines that are doing that particular one. Products are things like generators. They come in 250s, 200s, 300s. By the way, no architect in the world wakes up and they're like, I don't care, I'm going to design a 217.5 today. Forget those guys. We have to stop saying, just give me an empty space and I'll make it a unique snowflake however you want it. We can't do that because we're not getting scale, and that's creating waste. So in order to change, you have to have dissatisfaction. After that, you have to have a vision for what's possible. Don't give up. My contractors cannot give up that owners are never going to change. My owners can't give up that architects they'll figure it out for me. Let me push it down. My sustainability experts don't give up on industrialized construction. It is the answer for our planet. I'll tell you how. And after you have a vision, it's not enough to be inspired. You then have to do something. You have to have a couple of first concrete steps of action to get where you're going to go. And this is the important part. In order to overcome resistance, both internal resistance at your companies, which is usually harder, and external resistance in the world. By the way, I'm a woman in construction, then manufacturing, in tech. You don't think I know resistance? We can overcome this as an ecosystem. We have to start listening to people that don't look like us or talk like us or didn't come from our industries. And so why is it happening now? Let's ask ourselves, besides the fact COVID, it was happening before that. We're seeing convergence happen. It's funny, when I used to build subsea cable landing stations, we used to say data centers and subsea, that technology, it's converging, right? We've seen technology converge, right? Processes converging. We're not just contractors anymore. You're not just doing whatever somebody gave you in the drawings, right? You're trying to get up to the front of the process to influence it, right? So you're trying to understand those processes that are converging. Whole industries have converged. Industrialized construction, prefabrication, the modular companies you're talking, that is just evidence that convergence of industries. By the way, I know owners that own manufacturing facilities. You know architects that own manufacturing facilities now, right? We're seeing manufacturers understand how to get digital twin in the front of the design process. We see this happening all the time. So what does that mean? business models have converged and changed. If you think you're going to do business the way you did business 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, so business models have changed. But why is this happening now? And this was last year. GSK said, this is how we make manufacturing facilities now. Not how we want to make them, not how we're thinking of making them. This is how we make them. They picked kickball teams. Do you know what that means? Most of the data center guys are picking kickball teams now, too. That's not designed by an architect, gone out to bid, and then understanding what it could be in that snowflake. That is a product that gets integrated into that manufacturing facility every time. Partnering. Any of you in procurement? Stop that nonsense. It's about 90% of our waste, right? So what is happening? At that conference last year, I asked people, now that I described convergence business models, how many of you consider yourself a convergence customer? 82% said, that's me. And 79% of that audience said they're on a journey to productize. That's a lot. If you're a contractor right now, if you're an owner that doesn't understand these products in your kits of parts, if you're an architect that wants to understand how to move these around, you should be afraid if you didn't know this was happening. And where is it happening? Mostly think data centers, heavy MEP, where it's 60, 70, 50% of the costs. Any application where it's heavy MEP, heavy structure, hardened structures, structure is critical, big central utility plants that I don't want to build on the roof anymore, right? I want to build them concurrently. That's where it's happening. So our companies are changing, and I'm going to go kind of fast through these, but we're seeing owners become serial owners. I coined that phrase. Why? Because I thought of it like serial killers back in the day. They want to kill with the same fingerprint, right? I don't want 50 different data centers. I want the same data center. I want the same hospital. I want this. So operationally, I'm consistent, right? So they become serial owners. Building product manufacturers. So they want to do bigger and better assemblies. They're becoming solution aggregators. They're not just happy to be way, way downstream anymore. And we have contractors that are becoming, they want to become solution aggregators eventually as they become manufacturers. But right now, they're more like product and systems integrators. And architects and engineers are actually becoming generative designers. Really quickly, owners, again, they don't have one building, they have many buildings. Certainty of cost, schedule and savings, operational consistency, flexibility, sustainability is more important to them than beating up an electrical contractor for one little bid. They talk about things like this: design for manufacture and assembly, speed to market, kit of parts, reduced outcome variability, supply chain understanding and management and variability that's going on right now, especially now. They want integrated factory models. They want to understand the digital twin of not just the equipment, but the building themselves. Those building product manufacturers, they're becoming more solution aggregators, right? They don't want strut. They want the whole rack. So they want to get in the front of the process, and they want to aggregate more of their equipment into these, right? That's why skids happen now. They say things like product platform, protecting the spec, you hear them saying it, manufacturing informed design, design assist. These are all these words of them trying to get up to the front. They want a digitized marketplace, right? Contractors are becoming more product and systems integrators, right? So we have to become more like product and systems integrators because that's now where the only value is that you have. We have to really understand what things we're integrating on site. In fact, my friends at Turner, I could use this as an example. He said it out loud. My friend Ben Kaplan is like, I don't know if we'll ever make anything, but we'll be the best site integrator of all these things that go on. Right? Well, that's his choice. He doesn't want to be a product, manufacturer. He wants to be a systems integrator at that time. That's okay. What do they want? They want standards. They want vertical integration, right? They want to move more work off-site. They talk about fabrication to manufacturing. And so architects and engineers, they're not the generators of this data. That's what I just told you. They don't have the make information yet. So they want to arrange that information, understand the true parameters of that, and organize it using some technology and disseminate it out in the best possible way. That's actually how they make money in the future state. They become almost like embedded technology companies, not just architects, right? They say things like this: computational design. I think less than 3% of all architects at the moment have computational design experience, right? And they say things like manufacturing and assembly, digital twins, platform of standards, library kits of parts. So I wrote this transformation framework a couple of years ago because I was like, listen, it's okay to want things. I say this to my 13-year-old daughter. You can want things, but you got to know how to get there. If you want to be a doctor, you have to do a little bit of foundational study. If you want to be a manufacturer, you can maybe afford to buy a 6-axis arm robot right now, but maybe you shouldn't. Because foundationally, you don't have the right skills and tools. You don't have the right people that know how to do it. We don't have enough scale to make it work. And I always say end up like your treadmill. If you're not ready for it, it'll just have dust sitting in the corner, or it'll make scrap faster. Robots don't make things faster if you don't have enough things to feed them and do them at scale, right? Or understand the parameters of what they can actually do for you. So we need some readiness, platform readiness as well. Like once you're crossing over the silos, we have to understand, am I ready to actually share data across these silos? And then you have to have productization, both physical and digital. And we have to digitize that. You don't go right to digitization without understanding how to lay it all out first. You can't automate things that you haven't, it's like crawl before you fly. In the best manufacturers in the world, automation happens at the last 5%, not the first 5%. And this is going to be a gender comment. Stop buying toys when you don't know what you're making yet. Stop buying land in factories when you don't know what you're making yet. You got to have some digitization, then you need to connect it, and only then can you optimize things like generative design, which is optioneering of pieces and parts. And then we get to true circularity. Digital waste, everything we draw that never gets made, exponentially leads to physical waste. So why is data important? Well, obviously, everyone says we want better insights, we want better visibility, you want efficiencies. It's okay to want things, but this is the reality of it. We've moved to remote work, we have more data-driven projects, and really we lose and gain our money as owners in the asset lifecycle management, right? Not in the beating somebody up for 2% less on that piece of equipment. So there's massive information loss as you get to operational side of business, and we are really not really digitized up front as much as we need to be to share information across in the front of the process, which leads to the fact that we have no information at the end. And so yes, we show this all the time, and we're like, you can use the data to inform the planning. And I'm like, well, not if you only have one to build. These are data work streams of shared data for these types of customers. On the far right, you're going to see the manufacturers and the subcontractors. As you move to the left, you're going to see the subconsultants, the consultants, and the engineers. And then at the far left, you see the owner. Now think, everyone at that far right uses a million different kinds of software. Then they're using a different work stream. Then they don't have a standard. Then they're putting it back up to the arc. Then they're compressing it and making it, massaging the data. How good is that data at the front of this process? We have to impact change. We have to allow for some standards and some platform understanding in order for this guy, let's call him a data center owner, and these players, so that the data is actually usable, right? Because he wants the data or she wants the data to look like this. In reality, it's far worse than this, but it's all I could actually have them animate. It's like going in all directions. If you go in circles, iteratively over, that's what we're really getting. How much insight can you get from that? That's like comparing not even apples and oranges. It's like comparing apples and spaceships and a million other things. There isn't one ring to rule them all when it comes to platform anyway, right? You have to understand it's not going to be one product. So I go into a lot of meetings with CEOs. They're like, just sell me the solution. I'm like, how do I sell you the solution to that problem? I can get you on the journey. I can certainly do that because there's a difference between product and platform. And this is important. Products are tools, right? Platforms are portfolios, right, of products, and the surrounding ecosystem of products they let come in, not just theirs, others and competitors' products, right? Products has everything contained in it, like one kind of project management software. But platforms, the value is from sharing that information across many products, and the feature is really the connectivity, not the point and click and I get this feature, right? And then there may be challenges to add tools and connect. That's where we're at right now if you just have a product understanding of why you want data to rule your life. These products they can't be disparate and they have to talk to one another. Platforms, it's about the ability to connect these with external teams and our data so that we can understand some standards to get some clean data up to the front so that you could actually use it again and again and again. Right? So let's talk about that productization of data. Maybe at Autodesk University, which is coming up this year, hopefully you'll all come. Last year, you might have heard our CEO say something unprecedented, I thought. He said, we could fix the uncertainty in the phases of designing a building and building a building if we had manufacturing-informed design. And he showed Inventor, our mechanical CAD tool. There are other ones out there like SolidWorks competitor tools. And if you could actually define the rules and constraints of things that were made, designers could consume it in our building information modeling software, and that would be great. And he showed one-to-one mapping, like one bridge in this case to one. And you moved it in Revit, and it moved itself in Inventor, and they were connected. But the fact that we thought manufacturing in front of design is mind-blowing for those of you who are not nerds like me. So, and I've been promoting that for years now, and for 2 years, and we just did a very large investment now in manufacturing informed design because we need to enable this certainty, right? For data, and by the way, listen up for those of you who are like, I don't want the same thing every single time. No, it's one-to-many mapping. Because we know you're going to do one skid, right, that has certain parameters, but you can make 15 skids out of that same model if you're adjusting things, as long as you can still make it. As long as I don't let the architect stretch it too big or too wide, or I say too big or too wide, or put capacities on there we just can't do. As long as they don't make it too 17.5, right? That's all right. Actually, because it's one-to-many mapping within those parameters, it would let you make a 217.5 skid in this new world, right? So what does that mean? We go to this opportunity again, and we want to make sure we enable new tools so that this product, when it's made, we start thinking about it in advance. We start understanding that this product needs rules and constraints. By the way, design software doesn't enable that. You have to go to mechanical CAD software where there are rules and constraints on adjacencies. So it says you can only make it this big. You can only make it this wide. You can only put it next to something that has this kind of connection. And you can capture those. And that's a hard, heavy lift to my makers. Not so much my manufacturers, but to my subs. That's why be careful. That's harder for you. But it's only going to allow that Revit user or that design software user, AutoCAD user, to adjust it in the ways that are manufacturable. That's it. It stops them. It doesn't let them do something that you can't make. That's important to know. So this is all happening. We have to think about not just how it's made, but what is its sustainability criteria? Because ultimately, we want machine learning and AI to tell us which product is the right product to pick. That's called generative design. You can't do that unless you have the data backbone for that, for things to be understood, right? So we need to understand the physical piece part. And then you have to understand the digitized workflow that it has to take. There's going to be thousands of little mini workflows like neurological pathways because electrical needs different functionality than precast, than does structural steel, than does something else, right? So, but we have to productize some things and start digitizing these workflows. But we need to generate one-to-many, right? One-to-many, one model, many versions. That's how you actually can get something different. And we have to implement that by enabling dynamic content. People say standards. I say dynamic content that I can adjust within those standards, right? That little skid that we talked about needs a little door. I call it the door of the Explorer backpack. It needs a little data backbone. So when it travels across all of these things, all from concept all the way to assemble, all the way to commissioning and then operating, I go, I need sustainability information. And just like in Dora, she's like, I need rope. And then rope would pop out for those of you who have kids. Not the whole backpack. She didn't have to take it off and dump it on the ground. No, I just said, I need rope. And then it pops up. So you need to build that into the criteria of the productization so that we can get that little skid with its little backbone on it, little data backpack, across so that you as owners can reuse that data and improve that data and use that product again. And things like real-time availability of supply chain live in that data world, right? Things we want to know now. Simulation of the right kits of parts. Simulation of how I'm going to make them in the factory, right? You cannot optimize factory workflows unless you have a product. Sounds easy, right? So I was walking around a big contractor friend of mine, his shop, with another friend of mine that I put them together. And my friend makes automation equipment for the car industry, but now also for construction. True story. He goes, oh my God, see that thing they're doing over there? That's so dumb. I could sell them a $2 million machine for that thing they're doing with hangers. It would save them 50% of the time. He goes, why wouldn't they just buy that? And I go, because they're never going to do that thing again. They're never doing that activity ever again. They're doing it for this one data center, and then it'll look totally different on the next data center, or slightly different that I don't know what it'll look like. So you can't buy any equipment for that, which is why we're doing it by hand in that factory, which is a little better, but not good. Not good enough. You can have all these amazing things in your factory. You need them to optimize that manufacturing process so that we can make better skids, so you can make better data centers, so we can have better buildings, so that people can have digital infrastructure, right? And when you do that, that's when you could use the cool stuff that everybody shows you that you're like, I want that, but you can't have it. We have to figure this out. You want these things. And you cannot do any advanced workflows and automation utilizing not just our tools, but other people's tools to actually figure out how to do this stuff better using machine learning and AI, not our mouths, not our feet. I'm tired of hearing contractors saying, get me to the front of the process and I'll just fix everything. No, you cannot, because guess what? Even if you're the smartest guy at your shop, you're not smarter than a machine learning AI generative design tool that knows every permutation you've ever done and anything that's acceptable and allowable that tells them under these constraints, this is what you should do, right? You could use all these things. if you had a product, physical and digital. And then all of you hear digital twins every single day, right? What do you think that is? IoT sensors attached to products to understand how they're operating, from descriptive to autonomous, right? I want all these buildings, not just the equipment inside them, but the pieces and parts, so we understand how did it happen that I got it from the manufacturer? How did it come together? When was it there? When did I order it? How does it get on site? How does it work? How was it commissioned? Is it the right one? So one day when I'm my 30 data center builder, serial owner, I'm like, we have to build in this environment. What parameters for these other data centers are operating the way in which we want? What was that compared to how we ordered them? And so that I don't have to guess anymore or pull the guy up that built the 29 other ones. I could be like, this is the right combination of pieces and parts for California based on these laws, these rules, and these things going on, right? We can't do that right now. We just like get the smartest guy in the room or girl, right? So if you truly want that, you have to build on building information modeling. You have to have it, but you need the eye to become more intelligent. So we have to build upon manufacturing informed design and building information modeling, and we have to standardize not just on the BIM standards, but on the data structure. So those thousands of flows you saw going back up to that owner in data centers are real. You want them to be real, right? So that we can make decisions about them, data-driven decisions. How do we get there together? Well, I gave up my own business a couple of years ago after several years of talking to Autodesk because I realized I was too small, using my mouth and my feet, and I started enabling a group in the company called Convergence Consulting. We help you if you want to be on that business transformation, not software. Not like, hey, you should buy this software. More like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up in a business? What keeps you up at night? What are the important critical factors of that? What are the business outcomes you're looking for? And what are the capabilities you have now? What are you ready for and what are you not ready for? Are you platform ready? Are you manufacturing ready? Are you lean ready? All these things. Are you culturally ready? I love benevolent dictators, by the way, for when it comes to culture. You want to get stuff done, find a benevolent dictator. And then you have to connect platform workflows, right? It's not enough to have disparate little pieces of information like we saw. You have to connect that information in a meaningful way. And if people have to spend time connecting it, so I did a lot of semiconductor work with prefab, and you could only get 4 good hours a day on the job site. It's kind of like depending on the data center because they were getting on and off the job site. So I was like, now you ask them for this data. None of them use the same workflows, and they use different How much time do you think they spend not building your building or designing anything because they're managing and massaging data all day long? Think how unproductive we all are, right? We have to connect these, and we have to enable platform capabilities so that we have new partners and new software and more apps, right? This is a quick case study before I end. We just did this with a company that was looking at, and I like to read this, unlike the solutions architects, from the bottom up. Read it from the bottom up. There's lots of data, lots of disparate tools, lots of things that they had to connect, and they're all disparate. This is like every company I know just about. And then we had to understand what other data do they have, not just ours, but everybody else's, what software they're using, what capabilities, and then what do you actually want to see it look like at the end so that no one has to massage anything? That's possible, and how do you apply technology to that so nobody has to do it by hand? This is a real job. I just can't show you the name. And so it created sort of a next-gen use case where you could get all this stuff for free. Right? What's the right kit of parts approach? What are the design options I should use? So at the end of the day, they can get instant product information and what's going on in the manufacturing facility and simulate it, right? And we want to make sure that you can sell it. So nobody has to sell something that you can't make. So things like configuration up front to understand the parameters of the customer so you don't screw it up there so somebody can't make it later. That exists in this case study. And in fact, here's some of the data stream that we were mapping out. I showed you a simple version of it because trust me, like in software, this stuff I can't even read it anymore. I'm like, what does that thing say? But so basically we were mapping out all the databases and all the standards they want to have and where it comes from and what the inputs and outputs of that have to be and where it goes. And what you get out of that, and you can't really see this, but you get these amazing calculators. In this one, they were doing carbon calculation and ease of manufacturing and ease of availability of those pieces and parts. All those these were custom for them that they want that are part of their business. And by the way, then you can understand data-driven decisions when you're looking at embodied carbon like this one versus this one. That's not my opinion. Now that's fact. Why? Because I keep making that product over and over again and in these constraints. And so we can study things like embodied carbon with transportation. And we have to work together. 40% of what's in our landfills is from construction waste. 40%. Productization creates complete waste avoidance of cutting and garbage and dumpsters. We have to stop this nonsense. If you are interested in this or you're passionate, I always say I don't want to teach calculus to everybody. If you want to learn calculus, come call me. We'll talk calculus. Thank you so much, you guys, for listening today, and I really appreciate your time.